whenever I'm sitting here thinking about art, there are a couple things that always kind of find their way into the back of my head and always sort of distract me as I'm trying to speak. A couple things that I don't want to address or think about because I feel like there'll be setbacks, right? Like almost a couple inherent holes in my worldview, if you will. Do you guys have those things? I don't know, maybe this is just me and my ego protecting me, but I feel there's like a couple things that's like I don't want to think about that, or I don't even want to recognize that this little thing is there in my head, because then I'll have to go backwards on so much of what I think. Then I'll have to reevaluate so much of the way I view everything, and that feels like more work and more, I guess consequentially, it feels like a step back. But something I've said recently that I want to try and embrace more is viewing confusion not as a step back, but as a step forward, as a step to figuring out a more concrete perspective, a more concrete skill, whatever it may be. So because of that, I really do want to come here and not kid myself that I'm going to solve any of my big problems here on Paint and Talk in a 10-minute runtime, 15, 20 minute, however long this ends up being. But at least put out there, right? Because I think like, I don't know why I'm giving this speech as if I'm in an AA meeting where it's like addressing it's the first step, but I do think it's almost like once recognizing, or not even recognizing, but putting a name to something you've been thinking or feeling, I think is so important. I think it's such an underrated thing because it's a bigger step than you'd think, right? And the big thing that I'm tiptoeing around saying here is it good to think about art this much? Like, is it productive? Is it holding me back to think about art this much? Because for those of you who aren't familiar with what I do here, I come here every day and I think about art, I talk about art, and I honestly started doing this just because I had a lot of thoughts about art and how it works, and I felt that it was a subject that there's not a lot of, I don't know, I feel like it's a little bit self-serving to go there's not a lot of scholarship on, because what I'm doing here is by no stretch of the imagination scholarship. I'm not doing any sort of writing in a professional sense on art or anything, but I don't know, I felt like there was almost a lack of people talking and thinking about art, and I feel like people would like that a lot more, you know? And I've honestly been very happy to see that a ton of people do like it, a ton of people think it's really cool, and I think that's awesome to find. I think that's one of the best feelings ever, personally, is when you see, like, this thing I thought was niche, or I maybe didn't think that anybody else would relate to, is a very common thing. I think that's one of the best feelings on earth. It's almost like when you're in school as a kid, and it's like there's no people here that like Batman, and then you're like, oh my god, there's the Batman table. If only I had a Batman table, none of my issues would be what they are now. I'm joking, but I think that with all of this, right, I never started thinking about art just because I think thinking about art's interesting, right? Like I wasn't sitting down one day and writing out my thoughts on art for a YouTube video because I thought like this in its own sake is an ends. I thought this was a means to an ends of better understanding art, better understanding what I do. Because honestly, and maybe I'm getting too reflective for an episode of Paint Talk, but I do feel that somewhere around 2021, my entire worldview was shattered in a way where I got this hang up, right? And if you want more direct, this isn't me, there's not like tragedy or anything that happened here, but this was around the time where I went from criticizing art to trying to make art, and I think like that experience of understanding just how different these things are and how like interesting art is and how mysterious the process is, no matter how far you get into it. I think that has given me this hang up of like, there's something here, there's something interesting, right? And the only reason I've ever kept thinking about it further is because I wanted to create better. I wanted to have better art, honestly. And in some ways I think, I don't know, I think so much of the stuff that I put out into the world is almost contrary to what it teaches me. Like, a lot of, and for those of you who have been watching me for a while, you've definitely seen this. A lot of my work, such a hoity-toity way to put it, a lot of my output, I guess, is on the subjectivity of art. How, I don't believe there's very rigid standards, a lot of stuff like this, right? That's a lot of the conclusion to a lot of the stuff I do. And it's interesting because with every new thought I've had, it's made me so much better at critiquing my own art, which is weird because it's going against art criticism. And I don't know if that's a byproduct of a lot of the times when I'm thinking about art, I will find myself naming the best artists as examples or as sort of thought experiments to get to a conclusion, right? Like I'll be thinking, okay, if there was a rubric to make an objectively good piece of art, everybody will be able to paint a Picasso off rip, right? You know what I mean? Just by following this rubric and putting enough time in, right? And with that comes me thinking about what a good piece of art is, what a Picasso is, and then thinking about the sort of hidden element that makes that Picasso such a brilliant piece of art. And I think like the weird thing about that is looking at that element, all it makes me do is look back at my own art and be like, there's none of that element there. And then some pieces that I've really liked that I've done, both on and off camera, I'll look at those and be like, oh, I see a little bit of that energy here that I really love, right? I think it's given me almost a better sixth sense because I've spent more time thinking and trying to feel art, but it hasn't made me a better artist, and that's where I feel that, I fear that this is a purely counterproductive effort. This is, at the end of the day, the thing that I always am afraid to mention. Because I think there's probably a lot of truth in it. Picasso didn't famously, he'd never sat down and was like, okay, this is what makes a good piece of art, or this is what we can understand about art. Actually, who did a lot more of that? David Hume. And David Hume never made a good painting in his life. You know what I mean? Maybe part of this question that I always struggle with comes from the fact, maybe it's a facet of ego. Of like, I want to be known someday as a painter, and I'm scared of being known as somebody who just talks about art rather than making good art, right? And I think that is something I need to be conscious of in all I do, because, not so much in terms of like I need to rigorously control the non-existent public image that I don't have, right? More so in terms of like, I think it's a good thing because it keeps me focused on the paintings, on art that I make of like, I want this art to be good. I don't want it to just be, I'm talking and this is a visual. Because then it's very easy for the art I make here to become no more than Subway Surfers at the bottom of a podcast, where it's just to keep people watching while they listen to the talking. I feel like this is getting too deep into the way I view myself and get scared about people on the internet viewing me. What I'm trying to get to here is that so much of the best artists are thoughtless in what they do. Or maybe not thoughtless, but they're just intensely focused on process, not exactly any sort of thinking about art itself. They're just very much focused on, how do I make this picture better? How can I feel more here? How can I do more here? And I think one of the answer to this question that I am now naming, that's always been in the back of my head, really would come in the question of, were they successful in spite of their non-thinking, or because of their non-thinking? And what do I do because of that? Let's say I come to the conclusion through thinking and researching that the best artists are great because they do it so thoughtlessly, because they just throw down paint. They're just focused on painting 24/7, technique, feeling, color, texture. That's all they think in. That's the only terms that exist to them. And because of that, that's why they became great painters. Because they never thought about, what does this mean to society, right? Not that I'm painting ever, like, you'll never once catch me making a painting here on this series and going like, let's think about this painting in terms of society, but when I'm talking about the way the algorithm affects the way that we all create paintings, and talk about art and society, and I paint something, there's no way that doesn't find its way into the art, right? And I can't help but wonder, maybe that's a downside, is that will my overthinking that is inherently a part of me become a feature or a bug? Because I don't know, maybe the whole thing here is that when you overthink enough, eventually you gotta kind of overthink yourself, and that's all that's happening. Maybe this is an inconsequential question, but is there a benefit to not thinking about art? Like, should I not be thinking? Should I just be doing? And if the answer is that I need to think less because it's getting in the way of me being a good artist, what do I do about that? Do I become inauthentic because I believe it'll make me a better artist? Because that doesn't feel like the right answer, even though it could be, right? Maybe the solution's a $10,000 budget and a PR team, and I'm overthinking all this, and it just comes down to how many people know who I am. Not in terms of like, I'm not saying that in terms of like, oh, I need to be successful, but maybe what I'm trying to get at there is maybe a great artist really just comes down to how many people know about them. You know, like, is there a world that we're looking at somebody like a Henry Roberts as the best artist ever just because he has a better name 100 years out, and we say he's more of a genius because he wrote The Art Spirit? Because all these people that have written the best works about art are never great artists. And is that because they didn't think about, because all they were capable of doing was thinking about art so much that they couldn't create anything good? Because that's what I'm scared of happening. Because as much as I love thinking about art, I have this desire to be a good artist one day. Not a good artist in terms of like famous or prestigious or anything like that. A good artist in terms of like, I want to be satisfied with my own work. And is me thinking about art getting in the way of that? That's my fear. That's what I keep in the back of my head. Is should I not be thinking about art this much? Is this getting in my own way? So I don't know. I didn't mean for this episode to be as introspective as it ended up being. I thought I would come here, talk about this a little bit, and go on with my day. But turned out to be a little more introspective, because I guess this question ringing in the back of my head says more about me than it does any sort of art, right? So I guess it was always asking about this way. This is the painting. I want to just try to see it blue, throw the colors along the side. Don't know if there's any feeling in these colors still, but yeah. Go follow the Instagram. This will be up later this week with all the other paintings for this week. And until next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dice. This has been Paint and Talk episode 175. I'm here every morning, painting and talking with you all.